Hi again, this is Royce Morales. I'm a transformational facilitator and a spiritual teacher and author of 3 books of my teachings. I'm also a radio host on healthylife.net. So I've been talking about mirrors the last couple of episodes, so hopefully you got a chance to watch them. So all of this will make a lot more sense if you've seen those other 2. And today I'm going to talk about what to do with those mirrors that you see. I'm going to give you lots of information about how to tell if something is a mirror, which I've talked a little bit about here before. And I'm going to talk about what not to do with mirrors, because sometimes people take this information and terribly misuse it. So we're not going to do that, right? So just to remind you, a mirror is a reflection of something that you have suppressed. Usually it's about yourself in some way. I've suppressed something about myself and it shows up in my world because energy cannot be suppressed. The seesaw analogy that I keep giving you is a really accurate one. So if I'm pushing down one side of a seesaw, it has to come up somewhere else in my universe. Energy does that. No way to suppress it. So let's talk about what to do with all of this. It's an amazing tool. I find that I don't know how I would live without understanding mirrors. I really don't. And as I keep mentioning, it's not just about us doing our own personal work. It's about spreading the word so that others can start doing that, so that we can get rid of war and violence and all those terrible things that are going on in the world. So what do we do? How do we get in touch with mirrors? Let's talk about that. Very first thing to do is to recognize that you're in a button. And I was talking about buttons, I believe, in the last episode, and I was saying that buttons are not always about anger. Sometimes they're a button about sadness or jealousy or judgmentalness or the desire to fight or flee could show you that you're in a button. There's all kinds of ways that you can tell you're in a button, but usually you feel it in your body somewhere. Maybe your breathing gets shallow, your heart starts pounding, the adrenaline starts going, you have judgmental thoughts, negative thoughts. All of those things are indicative of the fact that you're in a button. And the rule of thumb that I had you tattoo on your arm is that when a button is pushed, it's showing you a mirror, always. There are no exceptions to this rule, none. So you're in a button, what is the mirror? And to start asking yourself, what is this about? And start noticing it, and especially notice your judgmental thoughts or those negative thoughts, those he's like that thoughts. I did a retreat one time a few years ago where I had everybody spend the entire 3-day retreat without using the word you. And what everybody learned from that is how quickly we just point the finger and you and they and them, rather than immediately recognize the mirror. And it's a great little habit to get into, that if you find yourself wanting to use the word you, just turn it around and say I, because that's going to be an accurate measurement or an accurate reflection of what's being mirrored to you. The other thing to do is to notice your exact phrasing of your button. So if you're judging somebody and you're saying, oh, they're just such a selfish person, or whatever your judgment is, turn that around and ask, how am I selfish? It may not be an exact duplicate mirror. Maybe they're selfish in terms of money and you're not, but there's something that's similar about that. It's perhaps what it symbolizes. So maybe it symbolizes not caring and somebody is selfish. So do I believe I'm not caring? So just do a little bit of a shift with that and see what comes to mind, and it's going to show you what's being mirrored. The other thing to do is to start noticing repetitious patterns. Like I was saying in the last video, mirrors get bigger until we recognize them. So chances are you have had this mirror happen a lot of times. It's not your first rodeo with this mirror. So start to notice patterns, repetitious cycles, things that have happened over and over and over in your life, judgments that you've had over in your life, etc., especially toward people that you're close with. So a lot of times mirrors get really big in your face with somebody that you're intimately involved with, or your parents or your children, because those are the ones that you really need to see the messages from the biggest. So that's why they're in your life. Now I want to talk about what to do with mirrors and what not to do with mirrors. So hopefully you're starting to get an idea of how all pervasive mirrors are and how powerful they are and what an incredible teacher they are. Hopefully I've gotten that across to you. So what should we not do with mirrors? What I find that people want to do immediately when they understand this concept is to point out mirrors to all their friends. Remember, you're pointing and there's 3 fingers back at you. So if you feel a strong need to point out a mirror to somebody, take a look and see if they are actually mirroring something to you. So yeah, don't do that. Plus the fact that people need to discover their own mirrors. It just doesn't work. You know, I've been doing this for decades and I have yet to be able to accurately point out someone's mirror to them. It just doesn't happen. Plus the fact that finding your own mirrors is a very empowering feeling. It kind of lifts the energy or the oomph off of it. So by pointing it out, you're ripping them off from that experience. So don't do that. The other thing to not do is, oh, and by the way, it's not your job. I had that in my notes and I wanted to make sure to say it. It's just not your job to point out mirrors. The other thing to not do is to not use mirrors as a weapon. And let me tell you a horrific story about one of my classes years ago. There was a person in this class that I could just see pushed everybody's buttons. He was an amazing person, but for whatever reason, everybody had buttons pushed by this guy. And I was just counting the minutes before I give them the lecture on mirrors because I figured, oh, good, this will resolve this whole problem for the group. So I gave the lecture on mirrors and everybody sat there, you know, getting it quietly. And somebody very timidly raised their hand and said, I just want to share that you, and she pointed directly at the person that was pushing everybody's buttons. She says, you are such a good mirror of that jerky part of myself. And everybody started laughing. And I just kind of sat there and said, that's not what we do with mirrors. And that's just not at all what this is about. And I had to explain it again. But the message was that, first of all, it's not a good idea to acknowledge what somebody is mirroring to you. It's probably just going to push their buttons. And second of all, she was using it as a weapon. She was trying to point out how jerky this guy was, rather than seeing that, oh, he's just reflecting something that I believe about myself that I don't like. So there were all kinds of more positive ways that she could have dealt with that situation. But the best thing she could have done was just to not say it. So if you're feeling the need to point out what somebody else is mirroring to you, chances are it's not a good idea. You're going to lose all your friends by doing that. And I find that sometimes even people that understand this concept, it's still kind of not okay to do that. So it's all about you. So just keep it over here and recognize what's going on in you. Okay. Don't insist that others look at their mirrors, look at yours instead. So even somebody that understands this information, you know, again, through the years, it's clear to me that somebody is in a button, but I never, ever, ever say to them, you need to look at your mirror about that. It's just so invalidating. And again, there's something that I would need to look at if I feel the overwhelming need to point out that somebody else needs to look at their mirrors. And what else? I guess that's probably it that I wanted to warn you about. But I do want to talk a little bit about what I refer to as the mirror dance. And basically what that is that on kind of a fear-based level as well as a higher consciousness level, we are drawn to somebody who is going to be our perfect mirror. And what I mean by that is our higher selves, our higher consciousness so desperately wants us to grow that we're going to have people in our life to assist us in that. But it's also what I refer to as a mutual mirror dance. So that person will be drawn to you, you will be drawn to them because you both have a compatible need to either grow together or to both have your lower consciousness fear-based buttons get pushed so that you can sit there and go, yeah, I'm right, that's how people are. So you're drawn together to learn something really big together, and because there's a compatible need on a lower consciousness level to be right about our programming, your programming. So I find that mirror dance, a lot of times like I said, we're very drawn to those people, but they will be the ones that push our buttons even more. But keep in mind that it's a mutual experience. So I'm drawn to you, you're drawn to me, we're doing this together. And again, it's not important to point it out. It's just important to recognize the dance that you're in and do it until you get the message. Now, what happens when you do get in touch with mirrors is everything shifts. You are, balancing out that seesaw, and energetically things can shift. And what happens from that is pretty miraculous. It's pretty amazing, actually. A lot of times, the situation resolves. Sometimes the person leaves. You're not pushing down that seesaw, and they're just kind of out of there because they got what they were supposed to get. You got what you were supposed to get. It's done. The way you perceive them could be completely different. I've had situations in my life, I could tell you dozens and hundreds of stories where I get in touch with a mirror and I just see them in such a completely different way. I'm filled with compassion and love for them. And 2 minutes before that, I wanted to, shake them. So things will shift, your perception will shift, all kinds of things will shift. Sometimes the button just goes away, even without doing the real deep work that I keep talking to you guys about. If it doesn't go away, chances are there's more to see. Sometimes those mirrors can be multifaceted, and they go deep, as I've been saying already. You also might be clearer about the choices that you're making. Sometimes when you see a mirror, it's like, oh, I didn't see it that way before. Now I understand the next choice I need to make or the next direction I need to go. So something will shift about that. I find, interestingly enough, now don't hold me to this because it doesn't always happen like this, but I find that when I see my side of a mirror, sometimes they change, sometimes they are able to even take responsibility for their own life. Doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And let's see, what else? Yeah, those are just some ways. They can leave, they can stay, and you'll be okay with it. All kinds of things happen from seeing mirrors and recognizing, taking responsibility. That's really what this is. You're taking responsibility for your life. And just know that it is impossible to shift over here without things shifting over there. It's impossible since everything is energy. I keep saying that. Shift your energy, energetically, everything shifts. So, and by the way, I have to emphasize this, don't do this mirror work trying to get somebody to change. Let go of those expectations, just do the work and watch the miracles happen, because it's not about trying to get them to change anyway. It's about looking within and changing from over here. If you would like to go further and deeper into this, reach out. I'm available for private work. I will be talking more about all kinds of interesting things on these videos, so stay tuned. Please hit like and follow, and if you have questions or comments, leave them in the chat. I will get back to you personally with any of your questions. If you want to follow me on Facebook, I'm on there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on You name it, I'm on it. And make sure to check out my website, roycemorales.com, and my books. They're all available on Amazon. Thank you so much for listening, and keep looking at those mirrors.